Good evening, everyone. Get my microphone near me. At this time, I'd like to call the regular Committee of the Whole meeting to order on Tuesday, February 7th, 2023. The village clock has it at 6:01 p.m. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Trustee Brady?
Here.
Trustee Brennan?
Present.
Trustee Galante? Here. Trustee Mahoney?
Present.
Trustee Mueller?
Here.
Trustee Sullivan? Here. President Klotz?
Present. We have quorum. We will begin. At this time, I'd look for a motion to approve the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held on January 17th, 2023.
So moved.
Second. Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Dennis. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll for item number 3?
Trustee Brady?
Yes.
Trustee Brennan?
Yes.
Trustee Galante? Yes. Trustee Mahoney?
Yes.
Trustee Mueller?
Yes.
Trustee Sullivan? Yes.
That motion carries. Item number 4, at this time, we'll receive a presentation of the fiscal 2023 annual comprehensive financial report from our auditing partner. And Hannah, would you like to introduce them? Or, sorry, David.
Take this, actually, just one slight correction. It's a 2022, it's the fiscal year 2022 annual comprehensive financial report. So the report was issued and signed off on January 5th, 2023. The auditor's communication to the Board of Trustee and Management was attached in the committee of the whole agenda. And a hard copy of the annual report, as you know, was placed in each of your mailboxes for your review and for reference. Tonight we have Anthony Servini from Sickish to present on the FY 2022 annual report.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone. On behalf of Sickish, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening, present a brief overview of our audit of the village as of and for your fiscal year ended April 30th, 2022. We issued several documents as a result of our audit, the largest being the annual comprehensive financial report, as well as several other documents there. Just to give a brief overview of the audit process, our audit process and our audit fieldwork is really broke into 3 components. Our planning phase, where we meet with staff, our preliminary phase, where we go through, do our internal control walkthroughs, send out questionnaires, perform our fraud risk assessment as part of that process, and then our final fieldwork phase, where we do the majority of our detailed substantive testing as part of the audit process. Want to highlight that the village has chosen to prepare an annual comprehensive financial report. This is a document that you voluntarily present and go through the effort of compiling, because this is something that you do in the spirit of full disclosure, accountability, and transparency to your constituents, your taxpayers, others that may have a vested interest in the village's net position and changes in the net position on an annual basis. Within this document, if you look at nothing else, we're looking for the summary pieces of it there. Recommend looking at the transmittal letter as well as the management discussion and analysis. The management discussion and analysis serves as the executive summary component to the report, includes the results, excerpted results and information from both fiscal year 22 as well as fiscal year 21. Most importantly, though, it has management's explanations for why those figures have changed from one year to the next. So recommend reading those 2 items in the report in conjunction with one another. Also want to commend the village for receipt of the Government Finance Officers Association, or GFOA, Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. Annually, the village submits its report to the GFOA for review as part of that program. Undergoes a detailed review by members of the GFOA Special Review Committee as well as members of GFOA staff. From a results standpoint for fiscal year 22, village had a very strong year. Your governmental activities increased about $21.8 million. That was driven by a primarily strong year in your general fund. If you look at the detail in the back sections of the report, you'll see that your revenues, primarily certain tax revenues, exceeded their budgetary amounts there, as well as expenditures that came in under budget related to that. Pleased to present that we've issued a clean, unmodified opinion on the financials, the highest level of assurance as auditors that we can provide, and that we conducted our audit in accordance with both generally accepted auditing standards as well as generally accepted government auditing standards, the latter of which is required because the village expended greater than $750,000 of federal awards during the course of the year. That total was $1.4 million. You had no findings as part of that process, so I want to commend you for the clean single audit report as well on that. Also can present this evening that we've issued no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies during the course of our audit. Those would be the most severe levels of comments that we can have from an internal control standpoint. Again, pleased to report that our audit did not identify any issues that rose to that level. As always, we have occasional recommendations as part of the process that we discuss with staff during the course of the audit there. But with that, want to just commend staff for their efforts on preparation for the audit for that, for the entity, the size of the villages and the volume of transactions that you all go through on an annual basis for that. Very limited number of journal entries, very clean reporting for you this evening. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know a lot of work goes into this and a lot of information gathering, so thank you, staff, and thank you for your work on all this. Open it up to the floor.
Can I say something, Mike?
Pardon me?
Can I say something?
Yeah, go
please?
ahead.
Thank you. Appreciate all the hard work you've done on this over the years for the village, and most importantly, our staff. We couldn't do it. Obviously, you're the checks and balances, and every year it comes back that we're doing everything above and beyond. I want to thank all our finance team and our staff that have worked so hard over the years to make sure that we receive these awards and we stay at such a high level when, as you see in the industry, a lot of towns struggle to meet those goals, which we do because we have excellent staff. So thank you very much, and thanks to all the staff for all this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Diane, you have your hand up, so I
Thank you.
assume.
I guess I want to, there's a couple comments in here, mostly on this journal entry 1, 3, and I think it's 7. Just to explain, it sounds like with the write-up on that is there, are those material adjustments that had to be made? I mean, just the way it's written up, it's saying, you know, the addition, none of the misstatements directed as a result of the audit procedures and corrected by the management were material, either individually or in aggregate, to each opinions, into each opinion unit's financial statements taken as a whole, except for the journal entry 1, 3, and 7.
Yeah, so there are certain entries in the board communication document that are included as part of that document there. Generally, as part of the process there, we have to note if there are material entries there. Those are often discussed as part of the audit process as to whether or not it is entries that the village would like us to propose the entries for, and then the village reviews and approves those entries for that there. If that is the case in terms of how those are presented, then they are included within this correspondence there, but does not raise to the level where we feel that what we look at is whether or not village staff would have the capability to post those entries if they, you know, went down that process there, and we have no concerns that they would be able to do that. So just more of a technicality in terms of what those are presented for.
So what are these entries? I mean, just the material 3. What are those entries for? These are entries, just so I understand, that you came across, that we had to make?
Some of
Prior
these,
to the audit.
correct, these are entries that were required for the financial statement, so I can go through, if you'd like to, in terms of
Just
the
three
entries that are
The
there.
ones that seem material to me, the 1, 3, and 7.
Sure, so entry 1 just relates to some opening fund balance adjustments there, primarily just related to how certain amounts were reported for incentives payable, and just classifying those amounts within both the general fund and that's the hotel tax fund. Entry 3 is an entry 3 and entry 6 are entries related to your bond issuances there that were somewhat unique in terms of the complexity of those entries this year. So working with staff, proposed some entries to address and correct those. And then entry 7 is just a reallocation, or basically changing the amounts related for the other post-employment benefit, or the OPEB liability for that process there. Bond entries, other post-employment benefit entries, all things that I would say are very common in terms of year-end adjustments that we see for our local government clients for that. So nothing that elevated to a significant concern level for us as part of those.
Thank you for explaining this to me.
My pleasure.
Other questions from the board? Go ahead, Mr. Brady.
No question, but a comment. Want to thank you very much. On page 15, credit card purchasing, sometime months ago, there was a question on whether or not we had control over the credit card. And Hannah explained to it that night, and you reconfirmed here that we believe that the village has adequate controls in place relative to the use of a single credit card purchase, that a separate credit card purchasing card policy is redundant and unnecessary. So I thank you for confirming everything that Hannah had said in the prior meetings. It's
Certainly.
good to see that in black and white.
And just to clarify on the, in terms of what's in this letter here, management has included that as a response in there, as their management response for that there.
Yeah.
Our process in terms of looking at this is to identify where there may or may not be risks there. And then management and ultimately in their role are responsible for determining whether the risk has been mitigated to an appropriate level for that there. But the fact of the matter is that we have it as at the lowest level, we call it deficiency comment there. It means it's an item for consideration for the board there, but not something that we feel that there is significant risk associated with it.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
No, I'll just say ditto to the mayor's comments and trustee Brady's comments. Appreciate all your guys' hard work on that, especially the finance department. You guys always do a fantastic job, so thanks for your commitment to fiscal responsibility here in the village, and I apologize for my voice. I'm a little froggy.
Thank you very much. Thank you, David. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, everyone.
No action needs to be taken on this particular item, so we will move on to item number 5, and we will discuss the resolution in support of Illinois Municipal League tax increment financing legislation. I believe Hannah was going to take this one.
Sure. This is just one of those items from time to time we'll bring to the board. The Illinois Municipal League, or IML, they are a lobbyist on behalf of municipalities all across the state. And so from time to time, when there's issues at the state level that generally impacts all municipalities, they'll reach out to the municipalities and ask for a resolution or an ordinance in support of or against a legislation proposed at the state level. So there's legislation that's been proposed before and it's being proposed again in upcoming sessions on tax increment financing districts, or our TIFs. So this is just a resolution that we're asking you all to approve, so that way this legislation being proposed at the state level does not move any further. It ultimately will just take away a lot more municipal authority for TIF management, which, you know, then limits us and ties our hands with one of our key economic incentive tools that we do have. So this is just, again, one of those straightforward items that helps lobby, you know, in our favor.
Thank you, Hannah. I will just say, you know, driving down Harlem towards 159th, you could see just how useful the TIF process could be for a village like ours. With all the new development that's going on there, the parking lots are cleaned up and looking much nicer, and we've got real growth there as a result of this type of financial tool. So I'm certainly in support of it. Any other questions or comments from the?
I agree with what you're saying on that. There is some part of this I do like. What they're putting in is the control, actually the reporting tool after the fact. I do believe, not that I agree that we have to vote for this today with you, but there is a part of it I do agree with on reporting out after the fact, on how that is. And I don't know if that's in the new legislation or if that was in the last one, but that part of it I do agree with. But overall, it's not. We need our tips.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
No, I'll just say this has been one of the best tools in Tinley's tool belt to spur economic growth. I mean, I think the convention center being one of the most successful TIFs in the state, along with what Trustee Miller has said, Harlem Avenue is a perfect example of what we're able to do and turn some of these blighted areas into new growth economic engines. So pleased to see this come across.
Go ahead and reflect that was the longest no comment I've ever heard, but go with it. Anyone else? And we'll have to formally move this to the board later this evening. So at this time, I'll make a motion to move item number 5 to the village board meeting later on this evening. Looking for a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Colleen. Madam Clerk, can you call a roll for item number 5?
Trustee Brady?
Yes.
Trustee Brennan?
Yes.
Trustee Galante?
Yes.
Trustee Mahoney?
Yes.
Trustee Mueller?
Yes.
Trustee Sullivan?
Yes.
That motion carries. Item number 6, discuss the following items for banging and gavel. We've got an extended incentive agreement date and a purchase agreement to sell the parking lot area back to Banging and Gavel. go ahead and take this one, Dan.
Yeah, so two-parter here. I'm gonna make it quick because I'm really losing my voice this time.
I understand.
So the first step of this is really just moving the deadline from the incentive agreement for Banging Gavel. It was previously at the end of 2022. They did ask for this to happen before that deadline. I'll say that. We were working out the parking lot issue, so the delay of this coming before you guys is actually kind of at our request as staff, so we could get it aligned. They kind of laid out all the things that have happened to this date to kind of delay it. None of it was preferred, but at this point, they have all the financing under construction, still on pace to be completed either in May or really early June. Mike Coleman was out there today and said they're definitely moving, so definitely on that pace. We're kicking out the deadline till the end of the year just to give us some buffer if something happens. We don't want to come forward with a fourth amendment, so we're just kind of kicking it to the end of the year, allowing them in case something, they can't get something in, gives them just a little bit of buffer to get that done. So number two is the parking lot. So this is really was kind of part of the original incentive deal that I think there was some thought that this would really be a strong public value. The reality is it's about 8 to 10 public spots out there. There's a number of equipment from Banging Gavel that's permanently on that site that was done through a licensing agreement. The reality is it's not going anywhere. And we'd have to renew that every 4 to 5 years. So instead of doing that, as well as not having Public Works in the village front the cost for maintenance of something that's really going to be utilized by this one business, was really the thought just to sell it back to them as well. It'll still be utilized by the downtown businesses, but the village won't have to upfront any future costs of maintenance, which are coming up out there. It's not in the best of shape, so they're willing to take that on, but obviously want to own it. So that's our recommendation, was just to kind of sell that parcel back to it since it has kind of minimal public benefit to it.
Sounds very good. Questions and comments from the board? Mr. Brady?
I have a question. I noticed in your note here in the packet that they said that you found, not you, but they found 2 tanks there, fuel tanks, okay? One, was there anything still in them? Did they rust away? Did it leak? Or did they take them out? What's going on with them?
Yeah, so they ended up taking them out. They followed all proper procedure with fire marshals and the IEPA, so they have all their approvals there. They were basically old kerosene tanks from back before there wasn't electricity and stuff there, so kind of cool, I think, to see it. Some people went out there to actually go see them. They were still full, I think, with kerosene, so not
No
leaking.
leaks?
Yeah, no leaking.
Wow, that's amazing.
So it's just something you'd find when you're dealing with 100-year-old plus couple 100-year-old buildings like this that you run into. They weren't happy when they hit it because it could have been a lot worse. There could have been leaking and things like that, but it was
Yeah.
pretty easy. They have them out now. Everything's filled in, so
Great,
no,
thank you.
no major issues there.
Just wondered what happened to the 2 tanks.
Yeah, but that did delay some of their projects
sure,
because
yeah.
they kind of came to a standstill when they hit those.
Thank you.
Additional questions from the board?
I'll just like to add that Banging Gavel, they just recently posted a video on Facebook of live videos of the renovations that are going on. So if anyone's interested, check it out because it's going to be beautiful. It's a beautiful building, and I know it's a huge project they took on. So, but it's going to be a really nice asset to our downtown area. So I'm happy to give them all the time they need.
And I
So
guess
it's
one
a
thing
big
I didn't
project.
mention is they're doing the entire project, so I think that even showed the different floors. The last
lot of
approval, they
workers
were
in
gonna
this, that's
phase
good.
this originally to make it happen. They have the financing for the whole project, so they're doing the whole thing.
Yeah, they kind of went through each floor, said this is where their dining's going to be, this is where the brewery's going to be. So
And it may get
it's-
completed in phases, but it's all coming together at
It's
once.
looking good.
So,
That's all.
Very cool. Any other questions or comments from the board? On a matter of procedure, did you want us to send these individually to the board, or can we send them as a whole?
I'll leave that up to you. I broke them out as 2 items, but if you guys feel like you're on the same page, you could just, we're pushing them both to the February 21st meeting.
Oh, so we move them, but to the February,
21st, yeah, it's not going tonight.
okay. But we could do them all together. Is that okay with everybody?
They're two separate items on here. Can we send these as
Okay,
consent
so-
agreement and the parking?
Okay.
Transfer them both to the board, yeah. How are they on the agenda? Yeah, we can move them both together.
All right, so at this time, I'll look for a motion to move item 6A to the village board meeting on February 21st, I believe the date is.
6A and B.
6A, we're just starting with 6A.
You voted, then 6B.
Okay. And we just said
We could take them both together if you want.
that's what we're doing. We just discussed that.
Oh, she,
Oh, sorry. I was answering her question, maybe not.
Yeah, if
didn't
you're
hear
doing
that.
one item, then you should just do 6A and B.
Okay, so I'll look for a motion to move 6A and 6B to the village board meeting on February 21st, 2023.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Brady.
I was second.
Thank you, Colleen. And Madam Clerk, can you call the roll for the combined 6A and 6B?
Trustee Brady?
Yes.
Trustee Brennan?
Yes.
Trustee Galante?
Yes.
Trustee Mahoney?
Yes.
Trustee Mueller?
Yes,
Trustee Sullivan?
Yes.
that motion carries. Item number 7, some contractor registration changes. Another one for community development. Jarrell is going to take this one. Welcome, Jarrell.
Thank you. All right, what we have in front of you guys is a 3-part request to amend the municipal code regarding contractor licensing. The first part is going to be a transition to a calendar year system from rolling system. The second is going to be a removal of a surety bond requirement. And the third will be a fee increase, and I'll go into each one. So a while back, the village partnered with a third-party agency to conduct a process analysis. It was recommended that we consider moving to a calendar year registration system. We weighed that against our current processes in the department, and we found it would be prudent to actually go ahead with their recommendation. The second one is going to be the removal of a surety bond requirement. So there's been a debate about this. There's a common misconception that surety bonds cover cosmetic defects and civil disputes between contractors and residents. When they don't, they only cover when workmanship is not done to code. So we haven't pulled a bond in about 10 years, or well, at least 10 years going back. We haven't pulled a bond. And so it really is kind of a time-consuming process. It requires a lot of follow-up on staff, and it really makes staff's job a little bit more difficult to do. And it is an excess cost to the contractor. And then the third is going to be that fee increase. So based on our comparable communities, we did some research. We're a little under the grain there. Most communities are charging anywhere from about $150 for general contractors, upwards to $300 for general contractors. Our subcontractors they range from about $75 to $150 as well. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, I'm here to answer.
And I'll just say on page 40 of your packet, I talked to Dan just before the meeting, and thank you, Mr. Brennan, for pointing this out. The current and proposed were actually switched, so the current is the $100 that Jarrell talked about for the contractors and $50 for the subcontractors, and the proposed is jumping up
Yeah,
to
it's
200.
right. Yeah, it's right in the text, but it's not right in the table.
Yeah,
That one's on me.
yeah. So a little clerical error, but the rest of it stands. So at this time, we're just going to be looking for some thoughts from the board on moving to the calendar year, removing the bond, and then the fee update. And we can handle those 3 separately, or we could just agree with Jarrell and the Community Development Department on all 3. Go ahead, Mr. Brennan.
I'll just say, right off the bat, I mean, I know we haven't pulled a bond in 10 years. I'm a little leery of pulling the requirement. It is a protection for the citizens still, residents that, I know it doesn't happen often, but I'm just a little hesitant on pulling that. Also, I do have a question, as far as these licenses go, when these contractors come in, if they're not licensed in the village, what, are we doing a tiered system where if they come in November 1st, are they only getting a license for 2 months and they have to re-up again? What's the situation to, Because ultimately, you know, residents can choose whoever they want to do business with, and they've never done business here in Tinley Park, you know, or is this, because all these costs are gonna be passed on to the residents, so generally, that's the way contractors do it, so if you could help
So
me
if,
with those
yeah,
two
we've
questions.
talked internally about that. What we're thinking is, what we're proposing is gonna be that if a contractor does come in, say in November, we would, their contractor, they would register through the end of this year till December 31st, and then their contractor registration would also roll over into the next year. So they would just register for a full year
Okay.
at that point.
Okay, that's helpful.
And then it's,
Yeah, as far as the bond requirement, I'm just against removing a protection for them. I know, it doesn't happen often, but I'm still a little leery against it, so those are my thoughts.
Hey, you, others from the board?
I guess from the bond perspective, because we've done some research on this too, just to see, are we going off on a limb by ourselves? And it's not, most communities are taking that back, just because most of the time for us, and again, this is just contractors, so it's not for like a development or something, we still get those bonds. But for the contractor, it can only be if it's like code-related work. So most of the times when a resident's looking at us to pull that, it's because they didn't live up to their contract. So they put in regular molding instead of ground molding. Can't pull a bond for that.
Yeah, right.
But with that in mind, even when we do go try and pull a bond, most communities you end up having to sue the bond company to get it anyway. So we're still paying our attorneys to go get the bond, which is not how it's supposed to work. But most of the time, they're not gonna voluntarily let it go anyways. So at that point, our money and efforts probably better spent going, if we wanna protect the resident, it would be to just go after the contractor. But again,
Yeah.
I've never seen it happen. So there's a pretty good amount of time and expense going in on a staff side for something that really doesn't yield actually much protection for the residents. I think it's a little bit more perceived than it is, but it actually does. If anything, we maybe used it as a threat once in a while if the contractor was being difficult, but most contractors know it's very often an empty threat because the bond company is not giving us 10 grand to fix it. We have to sue the bond company to even get the money.
Yeah, no, and I get that, but I do think that's part of our responsibility. I think that's, you know, us doing our due diligence, and ultimately, I feel like by removing this, it's, you know, we're really putting our, you know, residents out on an island, and, you know, most of these bonds we're not talking huge sums of money. I mean, they're not that expensive either. They're $50 to $100 for the contractor. I just, you know, if we revisited this in the future, these are just my thoughts, but I'm a little hesitant in doing so.
No, I'll just say, I don't think the cost of the bond was really the issue. It was more the staff time to make sure that it was in place, go and follow up on all that type of stuff was an expensive endeavor for something that we rarely, if ever, use as a tool to protect the citizens. So I certainly hear your point, Mr. Brennan, but,
And the timing issue comes up from a staff perspective because they don't, so unlike insurance, which everybody has and kind of just rolls over, a bond, they're usually getting that just for us at a specific time. So those expire separate from everything else we do. So there's a lot of staff time. It's even what delays permits a lot of times, is we're running around trying to find bonds. So what this kind of came up with us even trying to expedite our permit times. We have one person whose almost entire job is contractor registration, and even within that, a huge chunk of it is chasing down these bonds. So when we're looking at how do we expedite permits, where does our staff time go? This is kind of where this came up is.
Yeah.
Okay, this is kind of the thing that seems like maybe it's not getting the most use, but understand your concerns.
Yeah.
We still want to make sure we're looking out for the residents.
Well, and I get the insurance requirement. The insurance requirement's great. It's you know, I mean, $1 million is pretty basic. It's pretty much every contractor out there has it should have at least $1 million in coverage. But the bond can be submitted with the certificates that they're submitting with their license, I assume, right out at the same time.
They can get submitted. What we found
Wouldn't
is
that
the
streamline
bond can take a week. Like, they can't just usually call up their bond company unless they're a big enough contractor. If they're a big enough contractor, it's usually pretty simple. They have the money, they have it. If we're dealing with kind of smaller people, it could take them a week to get us that bond. Meanwhile, the resident's going, why don't I have my permit? And the permits can't get issued until we get that in. So the bonds, out of all the things we do for registration, takes kind of time suck the most. But yet, we're kind of getting the least out of it, so. And then looking at other towns, they were seeing the same thing. So the ones I kind of look at from like a good governance standpoint, Schaumburg, Naperville, comparably Orland Park, obviously we compare just in the area
Sure.
population-wise too. None of them have bond requirements anymore. Or Naperville does only for electricians, but nothing else. That's just kind of where we're coming from, but we're open to.
Right, okay.
Thanks for
So,
that.
just looking at the board, sounds like we all agree on the calendar. We all agree on the fee update. The bond is a little bit controversial, at least for Mr. Brennan. Procedurally, this would go to the board as a first read in the February 21st meeting, and then for adoption in March. Is that correct?
Does it need to read?
It only
But
needs
only
one
be
read?
one.
Okay. So would you mind getting your questions answered before that?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
we'll
that's fine.
give them the guidance to go through with all three, and then if we need to table the bond portion of that particular change at that meeting, we can.
Yeah, that's fine.
And we could certainly break that out as its own thing, understanding it's the bigger concern there.
Sounds good. And do you need us to make a motion to move it to the 21st?
Yes.
Yep.
Just could you share that with the rest of us too?
Okay. All right, at this time, I'll make a motion to move item number 7 to the village board meeting on February 21st, 2023.
Second?
Thank you, Colleen. And Madam Clerk, can you call the roll for item number 7?
Trustee Brady?
Yes.
Trustee Brennan?
Yes.
Trustee Galante?
Yes.
Trustee Mahoney?
Yes.
Trustee Mueller?
Yes.
Trustee Sullivan?
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Item number 8, discuss a memorandum of understanding with the Village of Linwood regarding the shooting range. Chief?
Yeah, I'll take that, thank you. I'm asking the board to approve this memorandum of understanding between the Village of Linwood and the Village of Tinley Park for their outdoor shooting range. It's $2,400 for 23 and 24 for both years. We use it, it's an outdoor range. It gives us outdoor conditions when we're qualifying. We can request it up to 2 times per month. I know that we use it at least once a month. There's a lot of other police departments that use it as well, but it's very beneficial for us. And the MOU just outlines the cost in terms of use, so hopefully you'll approve it.
Thank you very much, Chief. Questions from the board on item number 8? At this time, I'll look for a motion to move item number 8 to the village board meeting later
I'll
on
make
this
the motion.
evening. Mr. Brady, Mr. Brennan seconded it. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll for item number 8?
Trustee Brady?
Yes.
Trustee Brennan?
Yes.
Trustee Galante?
Yes.
Trustee Mahoney?
Yes.
Trustee Mueller?
Yes.
Trustee Sullivan?
Yes.
That motion carries. Item number 9, discuss the contract with Structured Solutions again for the sanitary sewer rehabilitation program. Mr. Urbanski?
Yes, thank you. As you recall, this was presented at a previous committee, and there were some questions and concerns about the location of the contractor, prevailing wage requirements, and pretty much things that were related to our responsible bidder ordinance. We have had extensive conversations with Structured Solutions. They are fully aware of our requirements and, had no issues with sticking to the price as proposed. So we will continue to recommend, this for approval and move to the board meeting.
Thank you, John. Questions from the board? Thank you for doing that follow-up, John. At this time, I'll ask for a motion to move item number 9 to the village board meeting later on this evening.
So moved.
Thank you, Bill.
Second.
Thank you, Colleen. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll for item number 9?
Trustee Brady?
Yes.
Trustee Brennan?
Yes.
Trustee Galante?
Yes.
Trustee Mahoney?
Yes.
Trustee Mueller?
Yes.
Trustee Sullivan?
Yes.
That motion carries. Item number 10, John, again, we will discuss the purchase of sewer camera and transporter from EJ Equipment.
Yes, sir, thank you. We purchased a sewer televising camera with the peripheral equipment from EJ Equipment a few years ago. The camera has gotten to the point where repairs are exceeding the value of it, and the recommendation is to buy a new replacement cameras, and the provider is a sole source provider that, again, the equipment is proprietary to the televising van and attachments. So we are asking for the committee and board to approve the purchase of the equipment at a price of $40,295.
Sounds very good. Questions and comments from the board on the purchase of the camera and the transporter? At this time, I'll ask for a motion to move item number 10 to the village board meeting later on this evening.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Dennis.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Bill. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll for item number 10?
Trustee Brady?
Yes.
Trustee Brennan?
Yes.
Trustee Galante?
Yes.
Trustee Mahoney?
Yes.
Trustee Mueller?
Yes.
Trustee Sullivan?
Yes.
Motion carries. At this time, we will take comments from the public for the committee of the whole. Would anyone like to address the committee of the whole? Let the record reflect there was none. And at this time, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Mr. Brady. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll for the adjournment?
Trustee Brady?
Yes.
Trustee Brennan?
Yes.
Trustee Galante?
Yes.
Trustee Mahoney?
Yes.
Trustee Mueller?
Yes,
Trustee Sullivan?
Yes.
that motion carries. We are adjourned at 6:37 PM. Thank you.